Imagine scrolling late at night, your screen glowing in a dark room. You click one harmless link, then another. Hours slip away as the trail leads deeper, twisting into corners of the internet that feel wrong. The stories here aren't just strange, they're dangerous. They whisper about cover-ups no one is supposed to discuss. Theories erased before most could ever read them, and rabbit holes that seem to pull you in, the deeper you go. Some of these theories are so unnerving that entire communities have vanished after discussing them. Posts get deleted, accounts disappear, and in the aftermath, all that's left are fragments, screenshots, whispers, and memories that can't be verified. What if I told you some of the darkest rabbit holes are not only real, but may still be unfolding right now, hidden behind usernames and forgotten threads? Welcome to Black Thread Mysteries. This is where we untangle the digital webs no one else dares to touch. Tonight, we'll step into the terrifying realm of conspiracy rabbit holes you've never heard of, but once you do, they'll haunt you long after the video ends. From shadowy networks claiming to control world events, to chilling theories that certain disasters were never accidents, each rabbit hole has its own strange logic, its own breadcrumb trail of half-truths. The danger isn't just in believing them, it's in realizing how many people disappeared after following them too far. Think about it. You're reading a post that seems harmless at first. Maybe it's someone rambling about coded messages hidden in popular culture. Maybe it's a user insisting they uncovered classified military secrets buried in plain sight. Most of us would scroll past and forget. But the ones who stayed, the ones who asked questions, replied, and tried to dig deeper. They're the ones who found themselves slipping into conspiracies that were never supposed to be opened. That's the haunting power of these bit holes. They don't come to you, you stumble onto them. And by the time you realize how deep you've gone, it's too late to climb back out. So brace yourself. Tonight, we're diving into rabbit holes so chilling, so hidden, that they feel like they were waiting for someone like you to find them. But be warned, once you hear these stories, you'll never look at the internet the same way again. The first rabbit hole begins innocently, with a forum buried deep in the archives of the early internet. At first glance, it looked like a community for discussing old, unsolved mysteries and forgotten government files. But scattered between harmless threads were posts written in a language that felt off, half-coded, half-confessional. One user in particular stood out, posting under the name Watcher212. Their threads always carried the same tone, paranoid, frantic, yet disturbingly detailed. They claimed to have found a series of documents suggesting certain global events, from airline disasters to sudden political shifts, weren't accidents at all, but carefully engineered outcomes. The strangest part? Every time they posted, accounts that replied to them would suddenly go inactive, as if the users behind them had vanished overnight. For months, people dismissed it as roleplay or someone trolling for attention. But the deeper you read, the harder it was to shake the feeling that there was something genuine beneath the madness. Watcher212 described phone calls at odd hours, black vans parked across the street, and emails that appeared in his inbox only to vanish before he could screenshot them. He warned others never to click the links he posted, because they were traps designed to track who was reading. Yet human curiosity is unstoppable. Those who clicked often stopped posting days later, their usernames now silent placeholders on the forum. This is where the conspiracy rabbit hole began to take shape. What if some of these posts weren't just fantasies? What if someone was deliberately seeding real information into obscure corners of the internet, knowing only the most curious, the most reckless, would follow? And what happened to those who did? Even moderators of the site admitted in archived messages that they were scared. One admin confessed that whole server backups had been wiped clean with no explanation, as if someone didn't want the record to exist. To this day, only fragments survive, quotes pulled from memory, blurred screenshots saved on old hard drives. The forum itself is gone, taken offline without warning in the late 2000s, but the whispers remain. Watcher 212 vanished along with it. His last post, dated just before the shutdown, read, "They've found me. I won't be back. Don't look for me." Was it performance art? A paranoid mind unraveling? Or something darker? The eerie part is how many people swear they remember reading his posts, yet can't find proof they were ever real. That's the power of the first rabbit hole. Its very existence feels like a ghost, hinting at truths erased so thoroughly that only shadows remain. The second rabbit hole takes us into a darker corner of the internet, one that appeared harmless at first, disguised as a site for decoding puzzles and riddles. It was the kind of place where enthusiasts swapped brain teasers, shared cryptograms, and discussed obscure historical codes. But tucked between these playful threads were messages that didn't fit. They were sequences of numbers, coordinates, strings of military-like jargon that felt out of place. Most ignored them, thinking they were just another riddle to solve. Yet a small group began digging deeper, and what they uncovered still fuels speculation today. The numbers weren't random. They matched restricted locations on global maps, places tied to classified operations and accidents that were never fully explained. Explosions in remote deserts, shipwrecks that never made the news, even missing aircraft. All of them lined up with these so-called puzzles. It was chilling enough on its own, but then the disappearances began. Users who tried solving the codes posted enthusiastically at first, sharing half-deciphered strings, uploading screenshots of their work. Then, abruptly, they went silent. No warnings, no goodbyes. Their accounts froze in mid-conversation, as if someone had cut the cord. Members of the forum grew uneasy. Some joked that the puzzles were cursed. Others whispered that they were never puzzles at all, but leaks, real data disguised as games to slip past moderators. One message, archived by a cautious user before it vanished, read, "You've almost solved it. Stop here. This isn't a game." The post disappeared within hours, but not before sparking a firestorm. Theories spread that intelligence agencies were monitoring the site, using it as bait to catch the overly curious. Whether true or not, the effect was undeniable. The entire forum shut down within weeks, and no trace of its original database remains. Some insist the puzzles continue to circulate, 8 in hidden Discord groups and invite-only boards, where new coordinates and ciphers appear at random. Others believe the whole thing was engineered, an elaborate rabbit hole meant to see who would follow instructions too far. But the unnerving detail that ties it all together is how precise those coordinates were. Maps checked years later revealed government installations built exactly where the puzzles had pointed long before they were public knowledge. Accident? Coincidence? Or proof that the forum's riddles weren't riddles at all? This rabbit hole reminds us that curiosity is a double-edged blade. Some questions don't just lack answers, they carry consequences for daring to ask them. The third rabbit hole surfaced in the form of a video series uploaded to a nearly anonymous account. The channel looked ordinary, grainy thumbnails, low subscriber count, and no obvious theme. But the videos themselves were unnerving. Each clip lasted only a few minutes, often filmed in dimly lit rooms or empty industrial spaces. The camera never showed faces, only objects. Old maps, handwritten notes, devices wired together like crude transmitters. At first, viewers assumed it was another attempt at viral horror art, but the details didn't add up. Some of the notes contained references to real-world intelligence operations, ones declassified only years later, as if the uploader had prior knowledge. Stranger still, viewers began reporting odd glitches when watching the videos. Audio distortions, hidden frames that appeared only when slowed down, symbols burned into single stills that looked like coded instructions. The comments section quickly filled with people trying to decode the symbols. They claimed the patterns matched Cold War-era cryptography manuals, while others linked them to obscure cult literature. The channel grew a cult following itself. Hundreds of users working together late at night, convinced they were piecing together a secret meant for them alone. Then came the vanishing. The account posted one final video showing a desk with scattered files. The frame flickered, and a distorted voice whispered, "This is not for you." After that, the channel disappeared. Every video was deleted within hours. No backups survived, except for a handful of screenshots and fragments people swore they downloaded, but later found corrupted or empty. Many believe the channel was scrubbed by authorities. Others think it was staged as a test, an experiment to see how fast people would notice and how deep they would dig. The most unsettling part. Some of the viewers who interacted most intensely reported strange activities. Tie afterward, phone calls with silence on the other end, emails filled with unreadable code, and even physical letters delivered with no return address. Though skeptics argue these are exaggerations, there's no denying how thoroughly the channel has been erased. Not even cached versions exist, which is rare for YouTube content from that era. It's as if it was never uploaded at all. And yet hundreds of people swear they saw it, felt it, decoded pieces of it. This rabbit hole embodies the nightmare of digital fragility. When something vanishes online, all that's left are memories and obsession. Maybe it was art, maybe it was truth disguised as art, but either way, its disappearance only deepened the mystery, ensuring that the few who glimpsed it would never stop wondering what it really meant. The fourth rabbit hole didn't start on forums or video sites, but inside an archive document dump hidden behind layers of broken links. People who stumbled onto it thought they'd found just another collection of leaked files, scanned reports, government memos, long boring text. But within the pile were documents marked with strange red symbols across the headers, as if stamped by a system not meant for public eyes. The language inside was fragmented yet specific, references to containment breaches, suppressed broadcasts, and incidents tied to dates that lined up with real historical events. In one file, an unexplained blackout in a major city was described not as an accident, but as a controlled event intended to stop information spreading. Most unnerving was a recurring phrase, Operation Canary Silence. The documents hinted it was an active program meant to monitor and eliminate what they called uncontrolled narratives. Readers who dug deeper noticed patterns. Certain disasters that had always carried unanswered questions seemed to be threaded together under this code name, and the more people connected dots, the stranger it got. The deeper someone went into the archive, the more corrupted their files became. Downloads failed midway, pages glitched into static as if the text itself was collapsing. People online speculated this was intentional, a built-in self-destruct to prevent the documents from spreading. And then, as always, those who pressed further began to vanish from the conversation. A small subreddit dedicated to decoding the files once had thousands of members. Today it's gone, removed without explanation. Some former members claimed they received warnings on their personal emails, urging them to stop looking. Others insisted their hard drives failed mysteriously right after downloading specific batches. Yet scattered screenshots and typed transcripts still circulate, just enough to prove the documents existed once, even if no one can verify their authenticity. The phrase, Operation Canary Silence, now carries a chilling weight in conspiracy circles. Some argue it was nothing but an elaborate hoax, an alternate reality game gone too far. Others believe it was the closest the public has ever come to touching the edge of something real, something dangerous. The frightening part isn't whether the documents were authentic, but how easily they were erased. The internet is supposed to be permanent, yet here was proof that entire archives, whole communities, can be wiped clean overnight without leaving a trace. That's the heart of this rabbit hole. The realization that erasure itself is a kind of evidence, sometimes the strongest evidence of all. The fifth rabbit hole begins with a series of anonymous blog posts that appeared across multiple platforms between 2010 and 2013. Each blog used a different username, yet the writing style was unmistakably the same. Clinical, methodical, and dripping with paranoia. The posts spoke about hidden timelines and false histories embedded in everyday life. Simple details, street names, advertising slogans, even weather reports were described as coded signals meant only for insiders. At first, readers mocked it as classic internet delusion, but then small coincidences began to surface. Locations mentioned in the posts later became the sites of strange accidents. News headlines eerily mirrored phrases lifted word for word from earlier entries. The deeper readers dug, the more they felt the author wasn't predicting events, but revealing them ahead of time. One post described a collapse in the northern grid, weeks before a blackout struck across several states. Another warned of a lost vessel east of the Straits, only days before a cargo ship disappeared without explanation. Those who followed the blogs closely claimed their devices started acting strange, search histories resetting, emails failing to send, files going missing from hard drives. The creepiness grew when readers realized the blogs weren't linked by search engines. You could only find them through direct links, as if they were deliberately hidden and only surfaced for the curious. And then, like the others, they all vanished in unison. One day the sites loaded fine. The next day they returned blank white screens. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Whole communities scrambled to archive the entries, but most of their backups corrupted instantly. It's as if the posts were designed to self-erase. But fragments remain, images with dates, time-stamped comments, quotes pasted into private forums. They're enough to prove the blogs existed, yet they're enough to reconstruct the whole picture. What unnerves researchers to this day is the tone of the final entry, the last post before it all went dark. It read, "You've seen enough. They're already watching you. Stop now before you belong to the timeline too." Even skeptics admit it carries an uncanny chill. Was it simply part of an elaborate role play? Or were these blogs genuinely operated by someone with access to information far beyond the ordinary? Here's where I want to pause and pull you in. What do you think? Were these coincidences or glimpses into something hidden? Comment your location below and tell me your theory. I want to know how far you think this rabbit hole really goes. The sixth rabbit hole hides not in forgotten blogs or shadowy forums, but in audio files. Strange recordings that began circulating on peer-to-peer networks in the mid-2000s. They were short, never longer than 5 minutes, and each carried the same monotonous label: signal capture. At first, listeners assumed they were snippets of radio static, nothing more than technical noise. But careful ears noticed patterns buried within the distortion, faint voices repeating coordinates, numbers ticking in perfect rhythm, metallic echoes resembling coded transmissions. People who analyzed the files claimed they were listening to a modern form of number stations, the Cold War relics once used for spy communication. If that were true, it would be disturbing enough, but the files grew darker. Some contained background sounds that shouldn't have been there. Footsteps scraping across concrete, breathing too close to the microphone, the distant hum of engines that didn't match any known aircraft. When researchers slowed the audio further, strange phrases emerged beneath the static, whispers saying, "It's not safe," or "Leave it alone." For years, these recordings spread in underground circles, downloaded, shared, and dissected endlessly. Yet every time someone posted them to mainstream sites, the files vanished quickly, accounts deleted as if they had violated unseen rules. A few brave listeners reported physical symptoms after looping the files for too long: headaches, dizziness, even the sensation of being watched. One user wrote, "The silence in my apartment isn't silent anymore. I hear them even when the file isn't playing." The creepiness escalated when maps began to connect the coordinates whispered in the recordings to real-world incidents: submarine accidents, nuclear test sites, remote military facilities. And then, inevitably, the disappearances followed. Some of the most active decoders, those who claimed to have cracked portions of the code, stopped posting without warning. Their names remain in old threads like ghostly markers of people who went too deep. Some say the recordings are an ongoing intelligence operation, still active, hidden in plain sight. Others argue they're the digital equivalent of cursed artifacts, made to lure the curious and leave them haunted, no matter what truth they find. The scariest possibility, though, is that they're both real messages disguised as myth, so no one can separate fact from fiction. And perhaps that's the perfect camouflage, because who would believe an internet ghost story about voices inside static? What ties these rabbit holes together isn't just the weirdness of their content, but the way the world responds when someone tries to pull at the thread. Sometimes nothing happens. Other times the response is swift and frightening. Accounts deleted, archives scrubbed, emails returned as undeliverable, and people who ask too many questions pushed to the margins or gone entirely. Journalists who chased leads on these threads report similar roadblocks. Internal sources drying up, files disappearing from shared drives, interviews stalled by suddenly unreachable witnesses. Even tech companies play a role. Content flagged as sensitive or dangerous vanishes under vague policies, while cached versions evaporate or become inaccessible behind legalese. And then there are the private messages, cryptic threats, anonymous warnings, or oddly polite requests to stop digging. For those who refuse to back down, the consequences can be personal and brutal. Job offers rescinded, relationships strained, credit freezes when identity checks fail, and in a handful of cases, real-world intimidation like a suspicious car parked outside a decoder's home or unexplained knocks on the door at night. Some researchers swear they were followed. Others say their devices were monitored, proof that curiosity can provoke a level of attention most people never imagine. The strangest part is how often the erasures themselves function as evidence. When an entire forum, video channel, or document dump disappears without a trace, it hints at forces capable of removing digital footprints at scale. And yet that very absence fuels conspiracy believers who see cover-ups everywhere. At the same time, skeptics warn that the pattern can be manufactured. Clever operators can simulate erasure to create mystique, or malicious actors can harass and silence genuine researchers under the guise of cleanup. This murky overlap between authentic suppress, ion and engineered myth-making makes it nearly impossible to separate truth from performance. In the middle of this fog, real people get hurt. Families pestered by strangers chasing leads, amateurs losing nights and mental health over puzzles that lead nowhere, and whistleblowers who vanish from life after stepping too close to something dangerous. Yet there are also moments of bravery. Archivists who mirror content across dozens of servers, indie journalists who publish redacted files, communities that support those targeted by harassment, and technologists building tools to preserve fragile archives. These quiet acts of defense keep fragments alive, and sometimes those fragments are enough to force official inquiries or at least raise uncomfortable questions. But even preservation has limits. Data decays, memories fade, and platforms change their rules, leaving behind only broken links and folklore. So what should a curious person do when they stumble into one of these holes? Proceed with caution. Document everything, protect your identity, and never assume the internet is a safe place for reckless digging. And remember the most important lesson the rabbit holes teach. Some doors once opened are impossible to shut, so think twice before you step through. By the time you've wandered this far into the rabbit holes, the question isn't just what's real, but why certain stories are constructed in the first place. Some theories suggest the deepest conspiracies aren't about hiding truth, but about manufacturing endless confusion, turning seekers into pawns in a game they can't win. The more time you spend chasing threads, the more you notice recycled patterns, fabricated timelines, contradictory testimonies, anonymous insiders who vanish after a few cryptic drops, each layer designed to keep curiosity burning, but resolution always out of reach. It's a form of psychological warfare against the public, offer just enough to spark obsession, but never enough to conclude. In this way, rabbit holes aren't simply mysteries to be solved, they're traps where time, trust, and sanity leak away. Skeptics argue this is the real conspiracy, to drown the population in so much noise that truth, when it does appear, looks indistinguishable from lies. But ask anyone who's gone too deep and they'll tell you there are moments, fleeting, dizzying moments, where the veil seems to lift and all the scattered fragments snap into place for a heartbeat before dissolving again. Those who've experienced this describe it as terrifying and intoxicating, like glimpsing the mechanics of the world only to have it slammed shut again. Some abandon the search after that moment, unable to bear the weight of what they think they saw. Others double down, convinced the pattern can be captured if they just dig harder, watch longer, read one more obscure PDF, or decode one more string of numbers. At the edge of obsession, the line between researcher and believer blurs, and here is where paranoia blooms. Friends start to look like plants, news anchors like mouthpieces, even family members like unknowing puppets in a rigged stage play. Entire lives have unraveled this way, with people quitting jobs, isolating themselves, or vanishing into online enclaves where the same obsessions echo endlessly. Yet dismissing these stories as madness misses something vital. The sheer consistency of the emotional fallout, how many describe the same descent, the same loss of time, the same erosion of certainty. It suggests the rabbit holes, whatever their origin, are more than idle distractions. They're engines built to consume human focus and twist it into endless loops. And whether that engine is run by governments, corporations, or shadow players nobody can identify, the result is the same. People changed, fragments of truth buried under layers of fiction, and a lingering fear that maybe the real conspiracy was never about the hidden files or vanished names, but about the way searching for them reshapes the mind itself. After long nights sifting through fragments, screenshots, and half-remembered caches, the rabbit holes leave you with an odd clarity. It's not always about finding a single smoking gun, but about understanding what those holes do to us. They strip away simple comforts, a belief in linear narratives, a trust that records will remain intact, and the notion that answers are always possible. Instead, they hand you questions that multiply the more you try to solve them, until every lead feels soaked in doubt. Some of the people who dove deepest found pieces that mattered. Anomalous dates, tiny matching details, or eyewitness notes that suggested patterns no casual observer could assemble. Yet even those fragments rarely produced decisive proof. They raised chances and suspicions, never court-ready certainties, which leaves us with a paradox. The more digitally connected we are, the easier it becomes to both discover secrets and lose them forever. To pursue these rabbit holes responsibly, you must hold skepticism in one hand and compassion in the other. Skepticism to avoid being swept by manufactured myth, and compassion because real people sometimes stand behind these mysteries, whether victims, hobbyist archivists, or exhausted investigators. This work can harm as much as it can illuminate. Families pestered by strangers, chronic sleuths losing sleep, and innocent lives tangled in accusations born of conjecture. Yet there's a moral thread too. Preservation matters. The archivists, the mirror sites, and the small teams that quietly copy databases to multiple servers are the unsung heroes who keep truth from being erased by negligence or force. And when real abuses are hinted at in those rabbit holes, documenting responsibly, contacting legitimate journalists, or reaching out to authorities with verified information can make a difference. Whatever you decide after watching this series, remember that curiosity without caution can lead to obsession, and obsession without evidence can lead to harm. If you feel drawn to dig, protect your identity, back up everything carefully, and prioritize your mental health. These mysteries are designed to consume time and attention. Thank you for following this descent into the internet's darkest corridors. If this episode unsettled you, or if you have an archive tip or experience related to any of the rabbit holes we covered, please share it below. State your location and your source clearly so other researchers can judge its merit. I read every thoughtful comment, and sometimes a new perspective is the missing piece that shifts everything. If you want more investigations like this, hit like, subscribe to Black Thread Mysteries, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next descent. If you're researching seriously, consider donating to independent archivists or supporting journalists who verify claims and protect whistleblowers. Finally, stay curious but stay safe. The internet holds many doors, and some are best approached with more than a flashlight.